Letter 35 of Young Americans Abroad, or Vacation in Europe, Travels in England, France, Holland, Belgium, Prussia, and Switzerland, edited by J. O. Choules, read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. Letter 35 Antwerp. Dear Charlie, I believe the lads have told you what they have seen in Belgium, and as they are just now busily employed, I shall endeavour to tell you our doings and enjoyments for the last day in this noble old city. We have been to see St. James's Church, where the great attraction is the tomb of Rubens. The altar is exquisitely fine, and was the work of Duquesnoy. Rubens brought it from Italy. Over the tomb is the famous Holy Family, in which Rubens has introduced himself as St. George, his father as Jerome, his wives as Martha and Magdalene, his grandfather as Old Time, and his son as the Angel. This wonderful creation of art was carried off by Napoleon to the Louvre, but was restored to the church in 1815. From hence we repaired to St. Paul's Church. It was built in 1679. It has a noble appearance, and retains its cloisters. In this building we noticed the Flagellation, by Rubens, Jesus bearing the Cross, by Van Dyck, the Crucifixion and Resurrection, by Jordaens, and the Adoration of the Shepherds, by Rubens. As we left the church we visited the Calvary, which is at the entrance, or rather off from it, at the right. It is meant to represent the place of Christ's death. There are several statues of prophets and apostles, and a sort of grotto. At the end is Mount Calvary, and the summit is the scene of the Saviour's crucifixion. Beneath is the tomb, the body, and the stone rolled away, and at the left are bars and flames, and poor creatures in purgatorial fires. A more wretched-looking burlesque was never placed in the vicinage of art and the productions of genius. Popery employs such trickery unblushingly in papal countries, but withholds their exhibition from the common sense of England and America, waiting till our education shall fit us for the simple, unalloyed system of delusion. We find the number of priests in Belgium much greater than in France. We see them in the cars, at the stations, and in every street. At one station, on our way to Antwerp, we saw a most strangely dressed man. He wore a cloak, and the cape formed a sort of hat. His head was shaved, and his feet were bare. We learned that he was a monk of La Trappe. He was as noble a looking man as I have seen in Europe. We devoted the morning to the museum, which is so famous for containing the richest productions of Rubens, Van Dyck, Jordaens, and a host of other great Flemish artists. As we entered we saw with interest the chair of Rubens, which he used in his studio. It bears his name and the date of 1638. It is in a glass case. Rubens has 16 pictures here, of high character, and Van Dyck several. We were all delighted with number 215, a dead Christ on a stone table, and the Virgin mourning at his side. Number 212 is a wonderful composition, Christ crucified between the thieves. The look of the dying penitent at his Saviour is not to be forgotten. The Magdalene of this picture is a creation of beauty indeed. I have purchased a fine engraving of this picture and several others by Rubens, and I hope, by looking at them long, to retain the impression I had made on my mind as I gazed upon the originals. Number 221, the Trinity, is a profane and ungracious representation of a dead Christ in the arms of a stern old man, who is intended for the Father. This picture is wonderfully fine, as regards the foreshortening of the dead body, and I never saw such an exhibition in this respect. Number 218, Christ showing his wounds to Thomas, is fine, but the picture has suffered from damp. Quentin Matsys has several of his productions here, and we looked with interest at a fine Sir Thomas More, by Holbein, The Flight into Europe, by Memling, Mater Dolorosa, by Albert Dürer, and many others, by Flemish artists. I was greatly pleased with number 382, The Death of Rubens, by Van Bray, who died in 1839. This is large, and I think a most effective picture. The two sons, the priest, the wife fainting, and the two scribes, are admirably disposed, and the open window, through which the cathedral spire is seen, seems to me exceedingly clever, but I fancy I admired it more than artists have done. On leaving this noble collection, we stopped at St. Andrew's Church to see a portrait of Mary, Queen of Scots, over a monument of the two ladies Curll, one of whom waited on her at her execution at Fotheringay Castle. After dinner we sallied out to see the Exchange, or Bourse, and from which the first London one was copied. Of course, this gave it an interest to us, as we could fancy we saw the royal building in which Queen Bess made such a display, and of which Gresham had so much reason to be proud. It has a piazza of iron arches and granite pillars, surrounding a square 200 feet long by 160 wide. It was built in 1531. On returning home we accidentally met with Mr. Vesey, the American consul. He invited us to his drawing room, and we had a very pleasant half hour. But when he found we were to leave the next day, he insisted on taking us to the outskirts and showing us the citadel and fortifications. In a few minutes he had us in a carriage, and became our kind and efficient guide till the loss of daylight rendered it useless to look around. I think we shall never forget the very great attention and friendship with which we all met from this gentleman, and I was gratified to hear him say that here, in Europe, nothing seemed to interest him in relation to mere party strife at home, while the honour and union of the countries seemed to him all and every thing. Mr. Vesey has a good library and some fine paintings. He is a man of taste, and marked by energy of character, and is just such a representative of his country as she needs at such points as Antwerp and other large cities. Yours truly, J.O.C. End of letter 35. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org.